Tonight, we're going to be pushing for 5 values using a pencil and an eraser and working from this reference photo. The first thing we're going to do is to choose a basic unit. A basic unit is something in the composition that isn't the smallest thing and it isn't the largest thing. You want it to be somewhere in the middle. If it's too small, then you find yourself counting a lot. If it's too big, you find yourself working in fractions. So you want to find something that is essentially a medium shape. So for our purposes, I'm going to use from the top of this apple to where the apple sits on the table, which is right about where that wrinkle is. And I'm marking that on my pencil. Normally, I bite my pencil, which is why all my pencils are chewed up and why artist pencils tend to be chewed up. But having that little mark makes it easier for me to line it up each time I'm measuring. So this is the measurement from the top of the apple to the bottom. Okay, once you have that measurement, we're going to roughly transfer it to about where that apple would be on the sketch. So this would be the top of the apple. This would be the bottom. You can see that's roughly a basic unit. Now you don't want to use a ruler because if you're using a ruler, then you're firmly on the left side of your brain, counting, dividing, adding, subtracting. And you don't want to do that. Instead, you want to solve this as a spatial relational problem. So you're using this shape and comparing everything else to this shape. So go ahead and mark your paper somewhere towards the center. Now with this shape, if I rotate it, I can see that at the widest point, the apple is the same width as it is tall. So it's almost a sphere. So I'm marking my paper with the same basic unit as the apple itself. With these 4 marks in place, it's easy to make a line that follows the basic shape of the apple. So I'm not trying to perfectly capture an apple. I'm just getting the basic shape of that apple. So now I have this apple in place, and I'm going to use the apple to help me get the other apple in the picture in place as well. So I can see that this apple touches this apple. And if I slide my basic unit over, I can see that this apple is not quite as tall as the other apple. So it only comes up to about here. So to make that, I'm moving my pencil over on the same plane and just roughly marking about where the top and the bottom of the apple would be. Now notice this little triangle between the two apples. This is a negative space shape. Negative space is the space between the positive forms. So if the apples are the positive forms, the space between them is the negative space shape. Sketching this shape will help me get the shape of the apples. And I'm sketching the shadow that I see back between these apples. Okay, now for this picture. You can see that the picture is obscured by this one big apple in front. That's our basic unit. The edge of the picture coincides with the negative space between the two apples on the top. So I'm going to start the picture right here. I can see where it starts on this side. It goes up about even with the stem on the top of the apple. Let's see, it goes up a little past that. And then there's a pinch in the neck and it flares out. Now, if I want to figure out how tall to make that, I measure the apple, then go up to the tallest point, and I can see that it comes to about right here on my basic unit. So I come back to my sketch and I can see that this is about the tallest point on the picture. And looking at the reference, I can see that the tallest point on the picture is to the right side of the stem if I were to make a line going straight up. So that helps me to place the edge of the picture.
Now, if I wanted to get the width of the picture, I line up my basic unit again, rotate, and I see how far away from the edge of the apple the picture, the widest part of the picture is. And it's about this far. So if I were to reckon that, I would say maybe a third. So I bring that measurement into my drawing with a little mark, and I know that this is about where the outer edge of that picture will be. So I can sketch the curved side. I see that it curves down towards the bottom.
Now, if I want to measure the width of the neck of the picture, I line up my basic unit with the apple again, bring it up and measure across the neck, which is pretty much a single basic unit. So I bring that measurement into my sketch. And from here to here is the same as the width, height of the apple. This may feel very laborious the first few times you do it, but soon you'll find that you only have to measure a few things in a composition and you can gauge everything else off of those couple of measurements. So get in the habit of it, and then it'll start to come naturally to you, and you'll be able to guesstimate really well. Okay, so we're going to measure the highest part on the other side of the width of the picture. Start off by getting my basic unit and then push my pencil up to where the highest part. So it's 1 3/4 of a basic unit. So what that looks like is if I come over here, push my pencil up, this will be the highest part on that spout. So this helps me to sketch the spout. I have the two highest parts, so I can connect them with that curving lip. All right, and now a little tweaking to make sure that the sides are roughly similar. When I do some tweaking, I try to put a pencil in the middle. I can see that there's a little more of a notch in this side. So that shows me I need to smooth this one out. So again, what I'm doing is putting my pencil right in the center, which gives me a center line on the shape. This picture is not symmetrical, but the shape of it towards the middle is. So that helps me to see the middle part. The top part, you're going to see a much bigger part of the upper left side and a smaller part on the upper right side. And now we have the basic shape. The background, we're going to insinuate the background. So I'm making a line where I see the wrinkle in the background based on the shape of the picture. So you look at your picture, notice that it's dark right behind this shape, medium behind this shape, and a little bit lighter in the front. So I'm making just a few of the shapes of the wrinkles, and I'm not sketching them as hard as the shapes of the pictures. The picture is the main important thing. The wrinkles are going to be lost edges, so we'll get a little experience doing some lost edges. So let's start off with the darkest dark. Now,
where you see something as dark as a 5 in the sunlight. I see the cast shadow under the picture in the apples? Yeah, cast shadow. On the apple, on the left side. On the apple is on the left, on the left of that apple. Yeah, it's a tough one. So it does look really dark, but is it as dark as this? Or is it as dark as this? Much more. Yeah, that's the challenge. So good eye. It is a dark. But for our purposes, it's going to be more of the orange one. Okay. But that's a good guess. Is there anything else you guys see? The stems? The stems, okay. So go ahead, using your pencil, and everything that you see is dark as the 5. Go ahead and color that.
So they go somewhere different around Dan's birthday, and she always picks Italy for her. No, so it's just like
okay. Now for the cast shadow that we see under the 5, the cast shadow is where the apple sits right on the tablecloth. It isn't the shadow that's coming away from the apple. It's directly underneath the apple. So where the weight of the apple is hitting that tablecloth is the darkest dark. So that brings us to the 4. Now the 4, as was pointed out, is a very dark dark. And this is where a lot of beginners don't go dark enough. And that is this form shadow or crest shadow. If it's a rounded object, then it's going to be on the crest of the object, the widest part of the object, facing away from the light. So if the light is coming from this direction, everything on this part of the apple hits the light, but then everything back here is in shadow. So the shadow or the form shadow is a 4. So we're going to call that the form shadow. Now this first one was a given because that this is the 4. This is the form shadow here. So go ahead and sketch that in place and make it as dark. Right here. So we're going to sketch it as a 4. It's not on the object itself, but it's a shadow.
Have you ever
It's
watched
not quite
Leverage Redemption?
Ron, okay, thank you.
That's
It's just
good.
not quite as dark as the one that you see.
Leverage Redemption.
This is the darkest part of that shadow because this part is curving away from the light. So we see that form shadow right in here. Notice it doesn't go all the way to the back edge. There's some reflected light that's hitting this backside of the picture. So we're stopping that form shadow right about here. Right here underneath it is a dark that's about a 4, but this is more of a middle value. So it's closer to a 3. So it's darker, like Teresa pointed out, right on the table underneath the apple, but not the whole shape of it, just right here. Would be part of one solid shape, except there's some reflected light that's bouncing up and breaking that shadow up. So on the bottom, the edge of the apple is very dark against the picture. It comes up almost to a point and then down towards the wrinkle in the fabric. Notice how you're starting to see that the top edge of the picture, the light is hitting it from this direction. You can see the highlight. You can see how it lights up the edge of the picture, but then this part is curled away from the light. Everything that is curled away from the light on this side has that form shadow on it. So we want to go pretty dark right up here on the edge of the picture, pretty dark. Look at the front of the tablecloth down here, especially towards the bottom. You can see that there is some really intense dark. Now, my value scale is covering that. You can't see it as much, but there would be a 4 down here. I'm going to leave that blank for now. Is the 3. The 3 is smack dab in the middle. And in light logic, that's called local color. So local color is the color of something that isn't light or isn't dark. So for example, on the apple, you can see the light's hitting it from this side. The local color is towards the middle. On the left side, it's dark. On the right side, it's light. Towards the middle, you can see the actual color of the apple itself. Now, parts of the apple are yellower, which, that's also local color. On the picture, this whole side is in light. This whole side is in dark. You can see the local color right about here. So that would be in the middle of this picture. On the fabric, you can see how some of the fabric is lighter where the light's hitting it. In the creases, it's darker. That's about a 3. So we're going to start sketching local color. So this is the 3, and I'm connecting those 4s with it.
and then also the shadows between the two apples and the negative space between them.
So this apple's a little bit lighter, and this would be a 3 right in here. In here on the apple. And then also the pitcher right next to the apple. So we're going to use that shadow right behind the pitcher to show off the pitcher itself. Yeah, so look at all these folds in the fabric and notice that the darker folds are about a 3. So not all of the shadows are going to be super dark. Sometimes they're going to be what's called high key, which would be the top 3 parts of the value scale. So low key would be the bottom 3. So that would be all dark. High key would be towards the lighter part. So cloth is very much like that. So you're seeing the darkest dark up here in these folds is only a 3. So you don't want to go any darker than a 3. And those folds will help show the shape of the fabric and also the shape of the pitcher and the apples. So there's a few different 3s up in the folds. Go ahead and get them all. Top part is about a 3, not the spout, but the top part. That brings us to the light side of our value scale. And the 2, which is a light, is called reflected light. So notice how the light bounces from this tablecloth onto the bottom of the apple.
On both apples. So you can see that this area of the apple is a little bit lighter than it would be if the tablecloth were a different color. This whole shadowy part would connect to the bottom if it wasn't for this reflected light. The same is true for this apple. This whole shadow would be one shape, except that the light reflects up into that shadow and breaks it up. It does the same thing on the pitcher. Notice how the light reflects on the pitcher and creates this shape on the bottom. Not only on the bottom, but notice too how the light background reflects on the side of the pitcher here and makes it lighter. How this tablecloth reflects on the underside of the spout. So once you start to see the pattern of reflected light, you see that it's opposite the pattern of the darts. The darts are all here. The lights, or the reflected lights, are all facing the tablecloth, which is as though where the light bounces off and hits the object, or facing the background. Notice on this apple, the pitcher reflects on the side of the apple, and that lightens up this edge of the apple. Notice that on this apple, the pitcher is reflecting on the part of the apple facing the pitcher, right here. So you can see there's a tiny little bit of light right there. See how your eyes start to pick out these details. Those subtle gradations between light and dark become clearer. The more you see them, the more you're able to see in general. So for the reflected light, we're going to lightly touch the pencil to the paper. If you want, you can just take one finger, push that graphite, and blend it a little, and that will also give you a 2 value. Just the graphite on your finger gives you a 2 value. The value of the whole background is pretty much a 2. So I'm very lightly shading it.
on the fabric, notice that the fabric that's curving towards the center or the darkest part of the fold is darker. So the fabric is darker on the side that's curving away from the light. Towards the center of the fold, it's going to be lighter because that part is getting some of the light.
Once you get the other values in place, the dark values are not near as dark as you thought they were, right? That's why it's important to be bold with your darks from the beginning.
The one is considered highlights. So this is the lightest light. You can't get any lighter than white paper when you're sketching. So the highlights are the shiny white spots you see. Now, using your eraser, you want to bear down hard and treat it like a boss. So you're bearing down, making the center part of that very light. And if you have trouble, you can lightly sketch the shape of the highlight and then just go a little bit darker around the shape of it. And that will help it to show.